talking about. So I'm going to tell you that today. Now, I'm not going to give you the long version of the story because it's a long version. It really is. But I've agonized over this, where to start. And let me explain. Here's what happened. I was, young in ministry and everything, and I had tried something. I'd started a church. I'd rented a building, and then I got laid off from work. So all this was going on at the same time. And about 3 months into it, I was already a month behind on my mortgage. Okay? Well, that's not where it stopped. It kept going. A couple months later, I was 2 months behind on my mortgage. Well, they're about to, And so I go to the Lord and I pray. And it wasn't a long, lengthy prayer. I simply just asked the Lord for help because I was in trouble. Okay? I could see I had 3 children and a wife, and I was about to lose my house. Okay? And the most remarkable thing happened, though. Okay, I don't have to tell you the rest of it, but the most remarkable thing happened, though, was this. That Sunday morning, because I was having that service every Sunday morning, and I'd prepare, and I was preaching, and I got up, and I did notice that there was somebody new at the church. And, I preached like normal and everything. After service, the man comes walking up to me. He says to me, God sent me here. Now, of course, my ears perked up, right? He said, God sent me here, and he told me to give you this. I kid you not. It was $1,000 that got me totally out of the hole, okay? And I was able to finish off trying to start that church, which didn't work, but that's another story. But the amazing thing was, this gentleman, I talked to him for a minute afterwards. And I asked him, I said, so where did you come from? Because I knew he wasn't from here in York, because I'd never seen him before, right? So I asked him, I said, where did you come from? Guess where he came from? The outskirts of Philadelphia. Now, you think about how amazing was this? Well, I wasn't advertising the church in Philadelphia. I did do the advertisement that they did for churches in our local paper, but that wasn't Philadelphia. And I thought about it later. I thanked him and I thank God, but I never understood other than the fact that God had to tell him where to come to. He had to have been a person who listened to the voice of God. So you say, well, what does that mean to me? Well, if God can do it once, he can do it again. Now, I don't know what everybody in here is believing for, but God is still a miracle-working God. And he can do it for us again. And I say us because I'm still believing for stuff. Okay? So just to let you know, I'm still believing God for things. So I'm like, well, God, if you want to do it again, all right, I'm testifying that you did it. Because that's what That's what he said. And one of the beautiful things about our God was, you know what he didn't do? He didn't scold me. He didn't chastise me. He didn't belittle me about it. He just mentioned, you didn't tell it. That's all he did. And that was, in all honesty, the end of the conversation. Okay? He didn't tell me, well, you need to go no, he just told me that, and it was up to me to do the rest. But God has a way to do things for us that we don't get sometimes. And we just need to trust it. So then I was thinking about it, and I said, well, you know what? There's something else. There's actually a couple, but there's another thing that happened that I didn't share. And this one is also interesting. I'd gotten out of the military, and I was on my way back to Pennsylvania, but I stopped past a little retreat kind of convention kind of thing, right, for, church and stuff, and so they were having a meeting, so I decided I would go there, and it was in a mountainous area and everything. So the second day, we're walking down the trails, and these trails were trails. It wouldn't have been smart, on my point of view, to be walking down these trails if you didn't have sneakers or boots on, because they were rocky and everything like this. But you know what was up ahead of me? A lady in flip-flops. And I'm just walking. I think I was talking to somebody, and I'm walking, and all of a sudden we see her fall. And I keep walking. Now I walk up to him and everything, and I'm walking up to him, and here blood's gushing out of her heel and stuff. And I look at him and say, can I pray? Because nobody was praying. People were trying to minister to him. I said, can I pray? And they said, well, sure. So I prayed for her, and this was the most remarkable miracle I've personally ever seen. God stopped the blood, repaired her heel, knitted all the skin back together. The lady got up and walked the rest of the way to the conference room. And I'm like, wow. And I knew it was just because somebody was willing to pray. And I was like, okay, that's cool. Now, I'm not going to tell you every time I prayed I've seen miracles, because I ain't. Hasn't happened, doesn't happen, okay? But it can happen. And what makes it happen, I don't know. Don't know. I can tell you, I do think that the first story I told you, I'll add this to it. I do believe that it may have had something to do with the fact that in the midst of the persecution that I was in at that time, I just asked God to forgive him and went on about my business. And I believe that opened that door for God to do that miracle for me. Because I wasn't holding anything, and I could have, but I didn't hold nothing on those people. But, God is just so good. And the last thing I'm going to tell you, because I'm not up here to tell you my whole story, the last thing I'll tell you is this. About 7 years ago, I started praying, and I asked God, I wanted to be out of debt. Okay? And so I prayed about it. I took all of my credit cards. I had 5 credit cards, and the total was right around 10,000. And they were all active. And I took them and put them on my table, and I spoke to them. And it wasn't, I just told them, no, you be paid in full, dematerialize, and be done. Well, I had heard other people do this, right? And I've heard of God canceling people's debts miraculously and everything. But you know what? That's not what happened for me. But what happened for me is this year, okay, remember I said this was 7 years ago, I started praying. I started doing what I felt the Lord said for me to do. And what I did was, I took the credit card with the lowest balance and started working on paying that one off first. Stopped charging and did that. When I got done with that one, I worked on the next one. Okay? So that's how I did it. So come this year, by the way, I kept those cards active for a while. Some of them are gone now, but because I just didn't feel like I needed to cut up all my cards for whatever reason. I wasn't into that. And I just said, okay, Lord. And what happened was, this year, I don't have any credit card debt at all. Now, don't get me wrong, I ain't rich, but I'm not owing anybody stuff, So that's a beautiful feeling. It's a beautiful feeling. So I'm telling you, if you're not there, believe God. Believe God to do it for you. If He did it for me, He can do it for you. And it wasn't like somebody just all of a sudden paid off all my stuff for me. That didn't happen. I don't know why. God was like, look, I'm with you, boy. Just hang in there. Just do it the way I tell you. So those are my testimonies for you today. Now, I actually do have a message for you. And I think this one is really, really interesting. And it's about discernment. Okay? And it's a critical thing that you need to receive from God. Because if I had discernment, I wouldn't have ever gotten into some of the trouble that I have gotten into. And then there was a time where, discernment was working for me. Well, I shouldn't say working for me. Discernment was working around me, and I would just know things. And that was beautiful. Does it happen all the time? No. But it's a beautiful thing to be trusting God. So let's look at the definition of what discernment is. Because I know growing up in the Pentecostal church, I heard some really wacky stuff about discernment, which really wasn't anything but people being suspicious of other people. That wasn't discernment. That was just them being suspicious. But discernment is the ability to judge well, perceive clearly, make intelligent distinctions, and it involves looking past the obvious to understand the hidden truth, recognize quality, and choose the best plan. Now, there are some stories in the Bible that I want to talk to you about that really, I think, explains this. And some of them show how having discernment was important. And some of them show that having not discernment or not asking God can cost you. So let's look at this. In Matthew chapter 24, verses 4 and 5, and Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. Now, what we need to do is to ask God to reveal to us the things that are going around us that He's not behind. Because I can name a bunch of them. Things that God ain't behind, that's going on in this world. You know, if I were to name a few, the first one comes to mind is this. I'm going to try and say it nicely. The whole thing, the gay thing, the gender identity issue, that's all a bunch of crap. Okay? But it's going on because people aren't discerning truth. You know? They're not discerning what's actually going on. So, there's so many other things I can mention, but I'll go on. Let's go to Ezra chapter 4, verse 1, and we'll talk about the first situation that I found that discernment turned out to be important. So here you have a situation where you have the children of Israel, they've gone back to the land to rebuild the temple and everything. So now and notice this word, adversaries of Judah. So I do believe that they knew that these people weren't for Judah and Benjamin. And that they heard that the children of captivity builded the temple unto the Lord God of Israel. And they came to Zerubbabel and to the chief of the fathers and said unto them, Let us build with you, for we seek your God, as you do. And we do sacrifice unto him since the days of, I don't know how to pronounce that, King of Ersas, which brought us up hither. But Zerubbabel and Joshua and the rest of the chief fathers of Israel said unto them, Ye have nothing to do with us to build a house unto our God, but we ourselves together will build unto the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus, king of Persia, had commanded us. So, now listen to this. Remember in the beginning it says that they were adversaries? Here they're proving their true nature. But what happened was Zerubbabel and them discerned the truth about them. And they weren't fooled. If they would have listened to what they wanted to do, they would have been inside trying to persecute them. Now they're just on the outside trying to cause trouble. So then the people of the land weakened the hands of the people of Judah and troubled them in the building. So you see, all they needed was God to reveal to them truth. Now, they did bother them for years. Actually, they bothered them until the next king came into power. But what didn't happen was they didn't completely stop them because they were able to discern their nature. And then if you let's look at Joshua. This is really cool because here you have Joshua after they had taken care of Jericho. They come across the sea and everything. They taken care of Jericho. There was people about 3 days away heard about them, and they devised a plan. I think it is 9 verse 10 or something like that. They devised a plan, and they told them, look, get some old moldy bread, put your old shoes on, put on some old clothes, and now go and talk to Joshua. Okay? So that's what this, they saw what they did. Verse 11. And so it says, wherefore our elders and all the inhabitants of our company spoke unto us, saying, take victuals with you for the journey, and go meet them, and say unto them, we are your servants. Wherefore now make a league with us. Now what happens is, they do meet them. They had the moldy bread and all this. Joshua and them see the moldy bread, see the clothes they wore, and they told them, when we left home, this bread was fresh. Okay? So they were lying. And Joshua, unfortunately, didn't inquire of the Lord about the situation. He just believed what he saw. Okay? So what was that? No discernment at all. And so what happens is they make an agreement with them. They make a pact with them. Okay? Now, 3 days later, in I think it's verse 16. It came to pass at the end of 3 days, after they had made a league with them, that they heard that they were neighbors, and that they dwelt among them. Now, I'll admit to you, for a long time, I saw that, and I was like, well, then they don't have to keep their agreement, because they lied to get it. But what I found out, that's not how God looks at it. God looks at it as, if you make an agreement, if you make a vow, he expects you to keep it. It's not a thing where you can, well, I don't have to do this because they were lying. No. And to even prove it, if you look later on, King Saul, he attacks these people. David, when he became king, had to go and make restitution and make sacrifices to get that curse off the land, because they went against what they had said. So, if you make a vow, you're better off keeping it and fulfilling it. The best thing to do is to don't make one. Because if you don't make the vow, then you don't have to deal with that. All right, the last one I want to point out was we have the Apostle Paul, amazing man of God, but here in Acts chapter 16, starting at about verse 16, the Apostle Paul was being greeted by this young girl, and she's just saying all these are men sent from God and all this kind of stuff, right? And she's doing this for days. And I don't know, but I would kind of think that Paul might have liked it in the start. Because everywhere else he'd gone, he was always persecuted. He was beaten. He was stoned, you know. But here, this girl, and so it came to pass we went to prayer. Certain damsel possessed with the spirit of divination met us, which brought her masters much gain and soothsaying. And the same followed Paul and us, crying, these men are the service of Most High God, which show us the way of salvation. And this did she many days, but Paul was grieved. Now, my thought is, that's when it was revealed to him what was going on. And he stirred and said to the Spirit, I command thee in the name of Jesus Christ to come out of her. And this spirit came out of her, but what happened? It upset the people so much that you know what they did? They take Paul, they beat him, they put him in prison, and that's when him and Silas start praying and worshiping God at midnight. So, I'm not going to tell you that if you have discernment, everybody's going to appreciate it. Because sometimes they won't. You know, they're not going to be happy about you knowing stuff. But it's better for you to know than not to know. That's weird. Okay, y'all. I'm done. I'm going to have to sit down. I need to pray. I'm not feeling right. So.